or the site summary has a number of different meanings, which are our first step towards connecting online community sites. The advantages of using RSS is that there's great tool support and there's many consumers of RSS feeds. So for example, I use Thunderbird for reading my email, and it has support for RSS feeds. I can read all my favorite sites using Thunderbird and subscribe to these RSS feeds. It does have some shortcomings, however, in that one of the strengths of RSS is that it is very general. You can get an RSS feed from anything. It could be recipes that have been updated on a website, or it could be updates to a wiki site, or it could be news headlines from RTE, or it could be somebody's blog post. So you can get a lot of updates, but you don't really know where they're coming from or what they are. And also, they're usually limited to the last 20 items. So let's say I've been writing a blog for the past 7 or 8 years. If you get an RSS feed from my site, you only get the last items I've written over the past few months, and you can't get an overall structured picture of what I've been developing or talking about overall. So what is SIOC? I've already told you what it stands for. The idea is connecting in forums, which could be blogs, mailing lists, bulletin boards, and posts from these different types of discussion sites. I've mentioned some of the interesting possibilities, like these distributed linked conversations and things like decentralized discussion channels. And I have 2 quotes here, one from a Drupal developer who says it's hot, and the other is from a CEO of a company called Opening Software who says that this SIOCosphere, he thinks of it, it's actually blogosphere 2.0. So you can see we've got 2 fans, at least, for SIOC, so all is not lost. The main concepts in SIOC are shown here. This is a kind of a summary of the main classes. There are more classes and properties, but I've just illustrated the main ones here. At the bottom here, we have a site which hosts a forum. That can be a blog, mailing list, comments from a Flickr site, whatever. And then the forum, or think of it as discussion channel, contains posts which are created by users. Users belong to certain user groups, and users might have certain roles in different sites. They might be moderators on one site, or administrators on another site, or they might just be subscribed to a particular forum. Now, SIOC also ties into other vocabularies that are out there. There's, Andreas mentioned a vocabulary called FOF, which stands for friend of a friend. And the idea is that we have, I mentioned this one person, many identities scenario. So we've got this one person here in the middle, and she's holding accounts on different sites. So she has one particular user account on a Usenet group, another account on a weblog, another account on a bulletin board, and so on. And as a semantic web vocabulary, SIOC can be reused with other semantic web vocabularies such as this one, FOF, and there's another one called SCOS, which it's a knowledge organization system. And down here at the bottom, I've shown a few posts from different systems that have been identified with a particular concept. So this weblog here, it's been identified with the concept of a cloud, and then this one here, these ones here are being identified with the concept of a rain cloud, and then you can start saying stuff like this concept is narrower than this concept, so you can start to ask questions like, find me all the stuff about rainy weather in Galway, or find me stuff about weather in Galway in general. Now, how can SIOC data be created? Well, our first step in developing SIOC was to develop the ontology, which I showed you the 6 main concepts. Then after that, we started providing data from different community sites by writing export modules for different discussion systems. And the idea is that we have an easy way of creating SIOC data on the web by providing exporters for open source systems such as WordPress, which is one of the biggest blogging systems being used, Drupal, which is a content management system, .clear, mailing lists, and so on. So we have versions of metadata exporters for each of these systems, and some more which are listed on our site. And as mentioned at the end there, the idea is that gigabytes of this community data will become available for use in different applications, for example, Swizzy and some others I'll show you later on. So this is a typical exporter this is from WordPress. Basically, it's just taking the data from the SQL database, using the existing WordPress functions to produce metadata for each of these concepts, like a forum, a user, a post, and so on. We also have a SIOC library written for PHP, which allows you to create metadata for each of these concepts, so that the person who's developing these exporters doesn't have to know too much about RDF or how semantic web data is produced, but they just have to pass the values to the API, and then the data gets spit out, I suppose, at the bottom there. So then, how can this SIOC data be used? Okay, so we're providing this data from web-based community sites like blogs, content management systems, bulletin boards, and so on, through these various SIOC interfaces. But also, legacy data wrappers are being developed for other systems like email, mailing lists, Usenet groups, and so on. And in fact, one group in Spain has developed a wrapper for mailing lists called SWAML, which is Semantic Web Archive of a Mailing List, and they're using SIOC as their main ontology for providing this legacy data in Semantic Web format. Then you get all this information, you crawl it into an RDF store, and you can start browsing this information, or you can use it in other applications for answering questions. So for example, we have a person who's trying to find out how to install Linux on her, how to install broadband on her Linux-based PC in Galway. She's maybe had certain constraints that has been in the past year and has to be read at least 20 times. And the idea is that you will get back results grouped together with the SIOC metadata if you want, not only links to the web pages. So this is an architecture of what we call the SIOC browser, where at the top here we have all these, it's basically another view of the previous slide, which is showing what happens to the data on the other side. We have all these SIOC-enabled websites. There's kind of two versions. There's a live SIOC browser, which browses the information on the fly, and then there's one which is crawling all the SIOC instances, storing them to an RDF data store, and then we have the browser engine sitting on top of that, and a user interface where you can either put in your own queries or you can use some pre-formatted ones. So here's a few screenshots of the SIOC browser. This really is just taking a blog post from my own blog as it happens, and it's showing all the concepts within that. So it's not really telling you a lot more than is in the blog post already.